punching aliens and running down metal corridors are common sights in this show, it's the historical adventures that make for some of the most fascinating Doctor Who stories. The show has visited many notable time periods and locations over the years, and this has resulted in the Doctor becoming directly involved in Earth history on more than one occasion. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with Who Culture here with 10 major ways the Doctor affected human history. Number 10. Hijacking the moon landing broadcast. One of the only examples of the Doctor actually utilising a historical event to help them win the day, the bad guys in Series 6's blockbuster 2-part opening were defeated with a little help from Neil Armstrong and his foot. With the silence having infested pretty much every last corner of the Earth, the Doctor devises a surprisingly violent way to deal with them. For someone who claims to be a pacifist, he convinces humanity to mercilessly slaughter them. That's one way of doing it, with a clip of a silence saying, "You should kill us all on sight," spliced into the broadcast of the moon landing. Any human who watches that iconic historical moment will now see a silent instructing people to kill them. This clip could be in the real broadcast too, and we'd never even know it. Isn't that spooky? If you ever feel a murderous urge out of nowhere, that might be it. Did the 11th Doctor care that he'd basically turned billions of humans into murderers? Since he was snogging River immediately afterwards, probably not. But hey, his plan was an effective one. Number 9. Inspiring H.G. Wells to write science fiction. One of the fathers of science fiction, H.G. Wells wrote many famous novels within that genre, and without him, the world of sci-fi entertainment wouldn't be as popular as it is today. You could even go as far as saying that Doctor Who wouldn't exist without Wells' forward-thinking ideas. So it's pretty funny that within the Doctor Who universe, Wells was inspired to write his sci-fi stories after an adventure he had with the Doctor. Wells pops up in the 6th Doctor serial Time Lash, where we don't learn who he is at first, we just know him as Herbert, a young writer with an interest in all things fantastical. From here, the Doctor's TARDIS materialises and Herbert is pulled into an adventure, and at the end of the serial, the Doctor and Peri learn the truth. Herbert is actually the H.G. Wells. Wells then returns to his own time, going on to pen classic stories like The Time Machine and The War of the Worlds. It was his short-lived travels with the Doctor that proved a key inspiration behind his revolutionary sci-fi narratives. Number 8. Lighting the 2012 Olympic flame. Though it was a future-set story when it first aired, the depressingly speedy passage of time means that Fear Her is now a historical. It starts with the Doctor and Rose intending to watch the opening ceremony of the 2012 Olympic Games, but this being Doctor Who, things could never be that simple. They soon get mixed up in a plot involving some missing children, upset parents, and a young girl with the unearthly power to trap people inside drawings, which she later ends up doing to the Doctor. To cut a very underwhelming story short, the Doctor eventually returns to his usual three-dimensional self. And oh look, he randomly appears on TV carrying the Olympic torch and lights the Olympic flame as the crowd cheers with glee. It's one of the most bizarre things that Doctor Who has ever done, and that really is saying something. Amusingly, the Doctor did end up carrying the torch at the real-life 2012 Olympics, only here it was the 11th Doctor, Matt Smith. Number 7. Marrying Queen Elizabeth I. Considering that the 10th Doctor snogs just about anything that moves, it wasn't really a surprise that he ended up getting married. His trip to the altar occurred in the Day of the Doctor, where he was initially attempting to track down a Zygon.
"You should kill us all on sight."
Thinking that the Zygon had taken the form of Queen Elizabeth I, he tried to get close to her by asking her to marry him, believing that the real Queen Liz would never agree to a proposal from a random stranger. Seeming to confirm the Doctor's suspicions, Liz agreed to marry him, but shock horror, her horse was the Zygon all along, so the Doctor was now engaged to the actual Queen. What a wild sentence that is. We'd heard about the Doctor's relationship with Elizabeth I a few times in the past, so it was satisfying to see it play out on screen. We don't actually get to see what the Doctor would be like as king though, since he fled in his TARDIS as soon as their wedding was over. Classy move, Doctor. This incident did then explain why an older version of Liz was so mad at the Doctor in the Shakespeare Code, and honestly, you can't really blame her for wanting to lop his head off. Number 6. Inadvertently inspiring the Great Fire of Rome. While the 11th Doctor is easily the clumsiest of them all, the character has always been a bit of a bumbling idiot, even as far back as their first incarnation. This side of them is usually played for laughs, but the Doctor's accidents can also have dire consequences too. Case in point, when the first Doctor inspired Emperor Nero to burn Rome to the ground. In the 1965 serial The Romans, the Doctor and his companions land in ancient Rome, where the Doctor is confronted by Nero. During this conversation, the Doctor doesn't realise that his glasses are channeling the heat of the sun, aiming aiming it at a map of Rome laid on the table. It's like that scene in Toy Story where Sid uses a magnifying glass to burn Woody's forehead, only much worse. This heat actually sets fire to the map, and the sight of Rome going up in flames, on paper, gives Nero the idea to do it for real, and thus the Great Fire of Rome soon came to pass. This event was later referenced in the Fires of Pompeii, where the 10th Doctor jokes that the Great Fire of Rome wasn't totally his fault. Actually, mate, it kinda was. Number 5. Playing a role in the Montgomery bus boycott. While a lot of historical trips are fun for the Doctor and friends to experience, this one was the exact opposite. Series 11's Rosa saw the 13th Doctor travel to 1950s America, where she met civil rights icon Rosa Parks. The episode explored some really mature themes, and was unflinching in its depiction of the appalling racism present at the time. At the end of the episode, the Doctor, Graham, Ryan and Yaz find themselves on board the very bus where Rosa's historic stand against racial segregation took place. In a heartbreaking moment, they realise that they must not interfere while Rosa is being threatened by the bus driver and subsequently arrested. Of course, the Doctor knew that Rosa's arrest was a crucial tipping point that would lead to positive change within society. Still, the Doctor is always ready to stand up to bullies, so putting her and her companions in a position like this made for a scene that was incredibly tough to watch. Number 4. Ensuring that Magna Carta was signed. Sometimes the Master doesn't really have a deep motivation for carrying out their evil schemes. Sometimes they just want to cause chaos for the hell of it. That's exactly what he's up to in the 5th Doctor serial, The King's Demons, in which the Doctor, Turlough and Tegan arrive in 1215 England and discover that the Master, with the help of everyone's favourite creaky android Chameleon, is plotting to sully King John's name so that Magna Carta will never be signed. Magna Carta is one of the most important documents in British history. It did a lot of good, such as helping to protect church rights, giving people the right to a fair trial, and also ensured that royalty and the government were not above the law. Hundreds of years later, its impact can still be felt. Needless to say, if it hadn't been signed, our society would have progressed in a wildly different and possibly much more damaging manner. Thankfully then, the Doctor was in our corner. This was hardly the greatest scheme the Master had cooked up, but it was nonetheless an important victory in preserving the correct course of history. Number 3. Accidentally saving Hitler. The Doctor has made many mistakes in their time, but saving Hitler's life is definitely up there with the worst of them. Although, to be fair, not all of this mess was the Doctor's fault. It was Amy and Rory's best friend Mel's who hijacked the TARDIS at gunpoint. It was Mel's who then shot the TARDIS, sending it spiralling out of control, and it was the useless Tesselector that was trying to punish Hitler in the first place. Regardless, the Doctor definitely did crash land on top of the Tesselector and prevented it from carrying out its method of justice. Hardly his finest moment. The only silver lining here is that we got the brilliant scene of Rory punching Hitler before escorting him to a cupboard and locking him in there. That's one way to deal with a tyrannical dictator. This is less a case of the Doctor affecting established human history, and more a case of him preventing it from going off the rails. Although, if the result was a dead Führer, then that's an alternate path that's no doubt worth embracing. Number 2. Starting the Great Fire of London. The Doctor and Starting Fires, an inseparable duo. The Visitation is a 5th Doctor historical that included an explanation for how, within the Doctor Who universe at least, the Great Fire of London was started. In the 4th part of this serial, the Doctor tracks down the Pteroleptils, a reptilian alien species that we haven't seen in a TV story since the 1980s. Finding their base in London, the Doctor proceeds to confront them, all the while carrying a burning torch with him. You can see where this is going. Sure enough, the Doctor drops his torch into a pile of hay, and the resulting fire spreads to a nearby pteroleptil weapon, which explodes due to the heat. The fire then grows and spreads, and the Doctor just flies off. Excuse me, but this was your fault. Doesn't the TARDIS have a hose pipe or something? Can you pour out the swimming pool? At the end of the story, it's revealed that the fire was started in a bakery on Pudding Lane, and so the Doctor knew that it was the beginning of the Great Fire of London. By leaving, he left history to play out as it was always meant to. Number 1. Destroying Pompeii. While the Doctor often plays with time like it's a big ball of string, they do at least have some restraint when it comes to fixed points. Certain events like the eruption of Vesuvius must always happen, so they can't really go and change them, even if they want to. But what they can do is get involved in making those fixed points happen. Series 4's The Fires of Pompeii offers up a devastating example of this, with the 10th Doctor and Donna becoming embroiled in a fiery alien plot to conquer the Earth. This culminates with the Doctor having to make a difficult choice. He can either let the aliens do their thing, or he can stop them by blowing up Vesuvius and killing them, which will also destroy Pompeii in the process. With a little help from Donna, he chooses the latter, unleashing the volcano's fury upon the thousands of innocent people below. This was the lesser of two evils for sure, but watching the Doctor wrestle with this decision is haunting, and it makes you wonder what other hugely destructive events the character has been unknowingly involved in over the centuries. And that is everything for this list, but the Doctor has affected more than just human history. So why don't you check out 10 times Doctor Who accidentally predicted our future? In the meantime, I've been Ellie with Who Culture, and in the words of Riversong herself, goodbye, sweeties.